If you've been paying any attention to entertainment lately, and I mean specifically interactive entertainment,
Yeah.
you've probably felt this shift happening.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels less like just a trend and more like a genuine revolution, you
Yeah.
know? And today we're going to dive right into the heart of that.
It's a full-on technological uprising, really, a shift in the whole power dynamic. And honestly, it's a course correction that I think a lot of players have been waiting for a long, long time.
Exactly. I mean, if you've picked up a controller recently, maybe you downloaded the latest big sequel from a major studio.
The ones with the 9-figure budgets.
Right. And you might have just felt something,
Mhm.
a kind of weariness maybe, or even just straight up boredom, where the gain is huge, but it feels, I don't know.
Hollow.
Hollow. That's the perfect word. So we're coining that feeling straight from the source material we've been looking at as AAA fatigue.
And we really need to get into why that fatigue is just hitting a critical mass right now. This isn't just, taste changing. This is a whole business model hitting its absolute limits. For sure.
For decades, the gaming industry ran on this one big idea, and it really does mirror old Hollywood. Bigger was always better.
Always.
More graphics, bigger worlds, higher budgets, more marketing.
It was a constant arms race of just scale and visuals.
Precisely. But what our analysis shows, and it's very clear, is that the old way is sputtering out. The whole budget to enjoyment ratio is it's completely out of whack. The data is suggesting that this corporate blockbuster bubble is really starting to deflate now around 2026. Analysts are pointing to this period as a critical tipping point where our habits are just recalibrating for good.
Okay, so let's quickly frame this for everyone listening. Most people know the term, but let's nail down what we mean by AAA in this whole economic picture.
Good idea.
So when we say AAA, we are talking strictly about the big budget games, the ones made by massive publicly traded corporations.
Right. We're talking about games with budgets that are easily over $100 million, sometimes pushing $200, even $300 million. They take hundreds, sometimes thousands of people years to make. These are the blockbusters.
They're the cultural behemoths, yeah.
Yeah.
They dominate headlines, they drive the quarterly earnings reports. And as our source material lays out, they are also increasingly the source of just immense frustration for the actual players.
So our mission for you today is pretty clear. We're going to synthesize all this material to really understand two key things. First, what are the exact economic and psychological reasons for this AAA fatigue?
And second,
how this counter movement, what we're calling the indie renaissance, is succeeding. How are these small, weird, creative games capturing the world's heart and its money with just a fraction of the budget?
we're basically looking at the pivot point, why creativity and, actual player autonomy are suddenly what's driving the market. It's replacing raw horsepower and graphics as the #1 thing people want. So get ready to look at games not just as fun, but as economic indicators of creative risk.
All right, so let's diagnose the sickness before we talk about the cure. Why are these gorgeous, expensive games, the ones with, photorealistic trees and motion-captured actors, why are they failing to hold our attention? The analysis you found really boils it down to 3 core pillars, right?
It does, and they really do work together to create this this perfect storm of disappointment. The 3 pillars of discontent, as the sources call them, are 1, repetition,
Okay.
2, monetization, and 3, and this is the big one, a fundamental lack of creative soul.
That last one, lack of soul, feels like the most damning. But let's start with repetition, because that's the one you feel almost immediately. Why do these brand new games feel so familiar, so stale?
It all comes back to the money, to those massive budgets we just talked about.
Right.
When a corporation spends $250 million, the investors, the people footing that bill, they demand certainty. They need to know they'll get a return. And the idea of taking a big creative risk is just financially terrifying.
So certainty means just do what worked last time.
Exactly. You rely on proven formulas, on game mechanics that you know worked in other billion-dollar franchises. And this leads directly to what the sources call the spreadsheet problem.
The spreadsheet problem. I love that term.
It's the core design flaw. It's this observation that so many AAA games feel less like they were designed by a passionate, creative team.
In a garage somewhere.
Yeah, and more like they were designed by a spreadsheet, not by a person. You ask why they feel stale, this is why.
So the spreadsheet isn't prioritizing a great story or surprising gameplay. It's prioritizing engagement metrics. What does that actually look like for me, the player?
Well, it dictates everything. If the data says that players who spend over 80 hours in a game are more likely to buy cosmetic items,
Then the mandate becomes make an 80-hour game.
you got it. And how do you do that cheaply? How do you pad the time? The spreadsheet says every open-world game needs 20 towers to climb to unlock the map. It needs 50 repetitive fetch this or kill that side quests.
Oh, the checklist.
And a crafting system that forces you to just grind for materials over and over in these vast but ultimately identical landscapes.
The whole Ubisoft Tower thing is the perfect example of that, isn't it? It's the same psychological reward loop, just copied and pasted across every single game until it stops feeling like a reward and starts feeling like a chore.
It just highlights the total lack of a creative spark. There's no surprise. There's no delightful weirdness that wasn't planned.
Yeah.
Every single element is focus group tested and optimized to minimize financial risk and maximize the time you spend staring at the screen. And it's often directly at the expense of fun. You're not exploring. You're just crossing items off a list.
And that feeling of just ticking boxes, that connects right into the second pillar, monetization, which I think you could argue is the most corrosive part of this whole thing.
This is where the frustration really boils over for people. The sources really hammer home the psychological drain of the constant drip feed of microtransactions.
Right.
The game is always asking you for $5 here, $10 there for these tiny little items.
And they're always either cosmetic, like an outfit that costs as much as a real lunch,
Yeah.
or they're even worse. They're items that let you skip the boring grind the developers put in there on purpose.
The time savers.
Yes.
Buy this resource pack for $15 or spend the next 6 hours doing it yourself.
Right.
When they intentionally design the game poorly just to sell you the solution, I mean, that just destroys any goodwill. It feels like they don't respect your time or your intelligence.
And that's the paradox that really drives the fatigue home, right?
Yeah.
You've already paid a premium. You just dropped $70 on this game, maybe more for Deluxe Edition.
Yeah.
And it still feels like it's trying to nickel and dime you at every turn.
It completely changes the experience. It stops being a fun leisure activity and it becomes this transactional burden. The analysts we looked at summed it up perfectly. It stops feeling like play and it starts feeling like work, not play. You feel like you're being managed by a corporation. Your playtime is just a metric to be optimized, not a story to be enjoyed.
That feeling of being managed, that's the key. And we can tie that directly to the whole live service drain we've seen dominate the industry. Can you explain that exhaustion?
The live service model is basically the idea that a game never ends. It's designed not to finish.
Right.
They're constantly getting updates, new seasons, new content drops, and new chances to sell you things. The problem is the success of a live service game is measured by how many hours you play it every single week, the engagement, not by how much you enjoyed the actual product.
So they're designed to be addictive, not satisfying.
Precisely. And that creates this intense live service fatigue.
Yeah.
People are tired of games that demand all their time, that punish you if you dare to step away for a couple of weeks because you'll miss out on some limited time event or some exclusive item that never comes back. The business model itself prioritizes recurring revenue over delivering a finished, satisfying standalone experience that actually respects that you have a life.
So when you put all three together,
Mm-hmm.
the formulaic repetition, the
Right.
relentless monetization that makes you feel like a product, and the resulting lack of soul because a spreadsheet made all the decisions, you get AAA fatigue.
Exactly. The players aren't quitting gaming. They're just looking for games that don't treat them like a walking ATM.
Which is the perfect transition, because the games that are absolutely crushing it right now are the ones offering the exact opposite of all that.
Small, finite, cheaper, and just bursting with personality, and that's the indie renaissance.
Okay, so let's leave the corporate boardrooms behind for a bit and look at the bright side. We've laid out why the big blockbusters are kind of collapsing under their own weight.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the source material gets really exciting, because it points to this huge market shift. Creativity and unique ideas are now demonstrably more valuable to people than just raw hardware power.
That is the core trade-off, 100%. For, 20 years? The whole conversation was about hardware generations. Can your new console or PC render these better graphics?
Yeah, the polygon count.
Right. But now, the dominant conversation is about emotional connection, about new ideas, about the quality of the game's systems. People aren't prioritizing how realistic the pixels are anymore. They're prioritizing the vibe.
The vibe, that's a perfect way to put it. It's not about how photorealistic the tree bark looks. It's about the unique feeling the game gives you, or the original stories you can create inside its world. It's all about the feeling.
Let's use some case studies here, because the analysis points to two absolute titans of the indie world as proof: Stardew Valley and RimWorld.
Fantastic examples. Both are huge commercial successes, and neither one relies on cutting-edge graphics at all.
Stardew Valley is the perfect proof of concept for the vibe check. I mean, it looks like a game from 30 years ago, right? It's got that deliberate pixel art style.
You bet.
Now, can you imagine walking into an EA or Ubisoft board meeting and pitching a 16-bit farming simulator as your flagship $200 million game for the year?
You'd be laughed out of the room.
Instantly. And yet, Stardew Valley is one of the most beloved and financially successful games on the planet.
And it's not just nostalgia. The data shows that it offers something these huge scripted games often miss: a really deep personal connection and, maybe most importantly, low-stakes autonomy.
Absolutely. Think about the contrast. In a typical AAA game, you're the chosen one, the super soldier, the hero. Your path is pretty much set.
Yeah, you're on rails.
In Stardew Valley, you're just a farmer, building a life. You decide what to plant, who to talk to, how to spend your day. You're slowly, organically bringing a community back to life. That feeling of building something that's genuinely yours is the soul that the AAA games are missing.
They prioritize the cinematic cutscene over letting you actually do something meaningful.
They do. And if Stardew Valley is about cozy, low-stakes freedom, RimWorld is the other side of that coin. It's about high-stakes, ruthless complexity, and it completely ignores graphical realism to get there.
RimWorld is the perfect example of a developer just going all in on deep, emergent systems.
100%. The graphics are almost basic, they're just functional, but that lets the developer put all their energy into these intricate psychological and survival simulations.
And those systems are what create the stories, right? Or this one story about a colonist in RimWorld who got rejected romantically.
Oh, I think I know this one.
And then he went and ate the corpse of a dead raider, which just drove the rest of his colony completely insane. That's not a scripted event. That's just what the game's systems created.
Exactly. It's the ultimate example of systems over spectacle. The game generates these complex, often hilarious, sometimes tragic stories just from how its hundreds of different systems interact with each other. And that's what hooks people for thousands of hours. It requires creative risk, not a bigger graphics budget.
Which brings us back to the value of risk and just plain weirdness. If the big companies are playing it safe with sequel number 10, now with more realistic puddles, where does the real innovation come from?
It comes from the indie developers who have nothing to lose. They can succeed by taking the exact kind of conceptual risks that big corporations are structurally forced to avoid because they're terrified of losing that massive investment.
It's just simple math.
It is. A $5 million indie game failing is a bummer. A $250 million AAA game failing is a corporate catastrophe. It means layoffs, firings.
So that fear just guarantees more of the same. But if you're only risking a smaller amount of money, you're much more likely to try something truly new, like mixing two genres that have never been mixed before.
Which brings us to the prime example of a successful, risky idea that a big corporation would have killed in a heartbeat. The Palworld phenomena.
Oh, Palworld. It was an explosion. Just instant and global.
It was. And the analysis describes it as taking this huge, almost reckless risk. It took the cute, family-friendly monster collecting idea.
A very clear nod to some other big franchises.
A very clear nod. And it mixed it with brutal, open-world survival, crafting, and this is the key, military-grade weapons and forced labor for the cute monsters.
That juxtaposition was the whole point. It was so weird and almost provocative.
And that's exactly why it broke through all the noise. It was just too weird, too contradictory for a big corporation to touch. They'd worry about brand safety or confusing their audience. But the indie team just did it, and millions of people who were bored with the same old thing absolutely loved it.
You can also see this in games that just reinvent a whole genre by changing the tone. The source mentions Fall Guys as a perfect case of that.
Right. Fall Guys looked at the battle royale genre, which was all gritty military shooters.
Super serious and intense.
And it just flipped it on its head. It stripped out all the grit and seriousness and turned it into a silly, colorful game show. It succeeded entirely on being fun and accessible, not on graphical power.
So if we boil it down, the appeal of indie games is that freedom from the financial pressure. It allows for actual creative freedom.
They have nothing to lose by being weird.
So they experiment, and they end up with games that feel genuine and unique, the perfect antidote to the AAA fatigue we're talking about.
It's a huge irony, isn't it? The most powerful games right now are often the ones that are the least powerful, technologically speaking. They're selling ideas, not just polygons.
So the fact that these small teams can now compete with, and sometimes even dominate, these global blockbusters, it's not just a creative story. It's a massive story about infrastructure. It's about how they can suddenly reach all of us, the players, instantly and all over the world. Let's unpack the mechanics of that, the concept of platform indie scaling.
This is the crucial part that people often miss. It's the engine behind the whole renaissance. Platform indie scaling is all about how modern digital stores, Steam, the Epic Games Store, even Roblox let a tiny team of, say, 3 people reach a global audience overnight.
And these platforms provide a huge safety net, right?
A massive one, yeah, both financially and technically.
Because back in the day, the barrier to entry was just immense. Even if you made a brilliant game, you had to get a publishing deal, manufacture thousands of physical discs.
Convince stores to actually put them on the shelves.
Exactly. The upfront cost was enormous. And if it didn't sell, you were stuck with warehouses full of unsold boxes.
And you were on the hook for all of it. Today, the platforms have just erased those problems. The financial risk is a tiny fraction of what it used to be because there's almost no distribution cost.
So what exactly are platforms like Steam providing that changes the economics so much? The sources say they handle all the invisible but massive infrastructure stuff.
Think about it. The platform handles the global distribution, sure, but it also provides the technical backbone. We're talking server maintenance, DDoS protection for when your game blows up, payment processing in 100 different currencies.
All the stuff that used to require a huge corporate IT department.
Yeah. All of it. Patching, updates, community tools, it's all handled. That frees up the developer to focus 100% on their creative idea because the platform is solving all the industrial scale problems for them, all for a cut of the revenue.
And the impact of that is just, it's so democratizing. The sources point out that on a platform like Roblox, a total beginner, like a teenager in their bedroom, can make a game and within a week have 1 million people playing it.
That kind of frictionless, zero capital global scale was science fiction 20 years ago. It's the ultimate disruption.
And this access, it turbocharges what you called the niche audience advantage.
Right. And this is where the economics of indie games completely diverge from the blockbuster model. It's why creative freedom is now a competitive advantage.
Explain that, because it sounds kind of counterintuitive. Aren't you always told to appeal to the biggest possible market?
In the AAA model, yes. You have to. When you spend $250 million, your game has to appeal to almost everyone just to break even.
Which leads to compromise.
And homogenization, the spreadsheet game we talked about. The indie model, thanks to these platforms, flips that completely. It lets you target a niche audience with incredible precision.
So it doesn't matter if a game is super weird or complicated.
Not anymore. If your game only appeals to, say, fans of deep space trading simulators, the platform helps you find that specific audience wherever they are in the world.
It's the power of huge numbers, but with low overhead. So if you only appeal to 5% of gamers, that's a total failure for a AAA game.
An existential failure.
But with a global audience of billions, that 5% is suddenly a massive, profitable customer base for a small team.
Exactly. The source material has this one striking statistic that just makes it so clear. If 0.1% of the world loves your weird game, that's still millions of people.
Wow.
And millions of sales, even at $20 or $30, means huge success and the freedom to keep making your weird games.
So indies are winning creatively and structurally. But now we're seeing the next step, where the lines are starting to blur. This new category is emerging, what the sources are calling AAA games.
AAA games are, I think, the most exciting trend right now. We define AAA as games with decent budgets, enough to hire real talent and get high production values.
But they keep that independent creative control.
Exactly. Freedom from the corporate spreadsheet with the focus of an indie developer.
It sounds like the best of both worlds. But how are these small teams suddenly making games that look like blockbusters without that crushing $200 million price tag?
The technology has leveled the playing field. The proprietary engines that used to be locked behind corporate walls are gone. Now, small teams are using incredibly powerful and accessible tools like Unreal Engine 5.
Unreal Engine 5 is the key, isn't it? It's like giving Hollywood-level tools to everyone.
It really is. Features like Nanite and Lumen let a small team of, say, 30 skilled artists create visuals that just a few years ago would have required a studio of hundreds. The bottleneck isn't technical anymore, it's human creativity.
So they get the AAA look and polish, but they keep the unique gameplay and creative spirit of an indie.
The best of both worlds. And it proves that massive scale isn't the same thing as quality. The sources point to an upcoming title where wins meet as a great example of this.
Right, where Windsmeet looks incredible. Visually, it looks every bit the AAA epic.
It does, but at its core, it has that indie spirit of innovation. It's focused on deep, unique mechanics and a complex narrative that feels personal and ambitious, not just financially mandated. It's the industry adapting, showing you can have high fidelity without the corporate baggage.
Okay, so we've painted a picture of this massive shift, with power flowing away from the big budget holders and toward the creators. But let's ask the pragmatic question. What does this mean for the giants? Are companies like EA and Ubisoft just going to go away?
The analysis offers a pretty grounded answer to that. Probably not.
Right.
We have to be realistic. These are enormous companies with deep pockets, iconic franchises that have been around for generations, like FIFA or Call of Duty. They aren't going to vanish overnight.
But they're being forced to change, right?
Yeah.
The indie renaissance isn't just competition. It's also like a constant stream of real-time market data showing them what players actually want.
Absolutely. The success of all these indie games is a continuous and probably embarrassing feedback loop for them. These big companies are being forced to change. They have to look at a breakout hit like Valheim or Palworld and ask themselves, why did this cheap, simple game capture the world's attention when our $200 million epic is collecting digital dust?
They're learning the hard way that players want quality and respect, not just scale.
And that realization leads directly to the core psychological takeaway for what modern players want. Autonomy.
Okay, define autonomy for us, because it really feels like the new king.
Players want autonomy in two key ways. First, systemic autonomy. The freedom to play with the game systems to create their own unique stories, like in RimWorld. And second, temporal autonomy. The freedom to play at their own pace. They want a finished product that respects their time. And crucially, they do not want to feel managed by a corporation.
That phrase, managed by a corporation, that's key. It's that feeling that your playtime is just data being harvested for an algorithm.
Instead of a genuine form of entertainment, yeah.
And when you contrast that with the indie hits, they all prioritize that autonomy. They're about emergent stories, unique mechanics, experiences you can finish and savor.
It's a total inversion of priorities. The old AAA model sees the player as a revenue stream to be managed. The indie model sees the player as a customer to be delighted.
So how are the giants trying to respond to this? Are they just trying to build their own indie games?
They're trying. We're seeing a slow pivot. Instead of just making another endless open-world game, they're trying to acquire or fund these AAA-style projects. They're trying to buy the innovation they can't seem to create themselves anymore.
They're trying to inject that indie weirdness into their portfolios.
Exactly. But it's a really tough balancing act. Can a massive corporate structure that's driven by quarterly reports really nurture a risky, personal, creative vision? History suggests that the pressure to make it safe and predictable often crushes that spark. It's always that tension between the spreadsheet and the soul.
So what's the long-term outlook here? We used to obsess over specs like frame rates and polygon counts.
Yeah.
The source material offers a really great thought on what the new, most important spec really is.
It's no longer about the hardware. It's about the software in our heads. The analysis concludes that human-level creativity is the most important spec of all. It has officially surpassed technological power. The most valuable machine in the industry right now is the creative human brain that can come up with the one unique idea the spreadsheet could never have predicted.
That's a fantastic and really empowering conclusion. The power is shifting back to the creators, to people with passion.
Yeah.
It feels like a great time to be a gamer because the market is finally being shaped by passion again, not just profit projections.
It really is. And if you're out there listening and you're feeling that exact AAA fatigue, maybe you're struggling to start the 50th generic side quest in a game you paid $70 for. Our recommendation, based on this whole deep dive, is simple.
Go explore the indie section of whatever store you use. Look for the game that seems a little weird, maybe has simple graphics, but has thousands of glowing reviews praising its deep systems. Don't look for realism. Look for life. You might just find a new world that actually respects your time, your money, and your intelligence. #tag outro. Well, this was an incredibly insightful look at the shifting sands of the gaming world. The central theme really holds up. The industry is moving away from these financially driven blockbusters and toward creativity-driven experiences that are winning on concept alone. Thanks for helping us unpack all of that.
My pleasure. It is absolutely fascinating to watch the market correct itself after years of just corporate excess. It just proves that delight and autonomy will always win out in the end.
I think so.
And, speaking of autonomy and delight, if you'll excuse me, I think I have a little pixelated farm in Stardew Valley that needs my attention.
Of course you do. A perfect encapsulation of where the industry's heart has really gone. The freedom to just drop everything and go tend to your digital turnips is the kind of respect players are looking for.
Gotta see if the traveling merchant has any rare seeds. It's important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
And as we sign off, let's leave you with one last provocative thought that builds on this whole conflict between the corporate spreadsheet and human creativity. Since corporations prioritize financial metrics, and those metrics demand endless content. And since generative AI is getting really good at creating huge amounts of content that looks good but is creatively hollow, the question is this.
How long until AI learns to mimic indie weirdness, to synthesize the appearance of quirkiness and deep systems, to generate games that tick all the right boxes for being unique but still lack any real human intention or risk?
If the AAA goal is to find the perfect algorithm for engagement, what happens when the algorithm can generate the perfect algorithm for perceived creativity? What will the true differentiator of real value be then?
Something to think about while you're tilling your digital soil.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.